Namaste, hello, and welcome to Agile Exploration Hub. I am your host Nagesh Deshpande, and on this episode of Agile Exploration Hub, we are discussing another topic which is most of the people want to listen. Is topic is building high performing teams, and today's guest is Ankit Agarwal. So let's welcome Ankit.
Hi Nagesh, thank you for having me again on Agile Exploration Hub.
Most
It feels great to be here as always.
Most welcome, Ankit. So, to my audience, Ankit been to our episodes previously. I will add his videos to the information box above. You can hit and watch his previous episodes. So, Ankit, let's jump onto today's topic: building high performing teams. Now, most of like my colleagues or even my friends as a scrum master, those who are working, they are working with multiple teams, and this is one of the challenge that performance of all the teams are not equal. They are either ahead or behind, and there is a gap. So to our audience, we are bringing today's episode not just information about how to build it, but some of the exercises that Ankit is going to share with us. So let's get on to today's episode, Ankit. So Ankit, you know, what I want to understand is like, what do you mean by, or what does it mean, a high performing team, in simple words?
Well, if I have to put it in simple words, I would remember the conversation we were having the other day about CID.
CID, yes. Absolutely, yes, yes.
The same size of teams, people doing their things years
Yes,
and years,
yes.
but
For 20 years.
for 20 years, yes.
Yes.
And then everyone's still doing the same role happily. But
Yeah.
jokes apart, or maybe we should do a separate podcast on CID, invite more people. Uh, Yeah. So jokes apart, if I have to define it very simply, a high-performing team is not only a team which is constantly just achieving the business outcomes or outputs. It is also about how they work together.
Mm,
So high-performing team is something which has psychological safety. That would be the first thing, which is trying to self-manage, which
mm,
has autonomy aligned with business goals, and which is working like a smooth unit, trying to always do things better, do things differently, and continuously improve, but then with keeping the trust and psychological safety, maintaining the team dynamics that they have. So this is a very raw definition of what a high performing team would be. If you look at Tuxman model, the one that we all refer for different stages of team, right? Forming, norming, storming, performing. So if your team is on that performing stage, then they are a high performing team.
okay. So something like a well-oiled machine, which is
Yes.
doing their perfect work, or much or innovative or even additional work what they are looking for. So that's a good way of looking at it. And you brought one good topic about psychological safety, which can we can have another episode, but I want to I want you to explain a little bit on it, if there are any examples, any projects, or someone has done it.
So the first thing that I would remember from psychological safety is there is this video that I will share the link to, but there was this project done in Google called Project Aristotle,
Mm,
and they were trying to see how will you build a perfect team, what factors would matter the most when you're trying to build a perfect team, how would you go about it, and they thought, and it's very interesting. I'll probably take a minute more to talk about it, but it's very interesting. They tried to put people of different seniority, people mixed, who are extroverts and introverts, people who are all extroverts or people who are all introverts, or technically senior people versus experience wise. So they did a lot of these, and they found that none of these actually mattered as much as two factors which contributed the most to building the perfect team. One is when people were put together as a team, and once they started working together, uh, so they call it active listening or
Mm.
ostentatious listening, which is where to know how engaged and active are you in listening to each other. So, for example, if there's a daily stand-up going on or daily scrum going on, you've talked about your part, and then if I'm speaking, but then you look at other Jira tickets or you're busy in your phone, then you're not listening to me. So I don't
Right.
feel valued. You are not engaging in that conversation. Or, for example, you are a leader. You've asked me a question, but you're multitasking separately. Uh, that wouldn't motivate me to, answer the best way I would want to, or even engage in a conversation. So
Mm.
active listening, where everyone is equally interested in what everyone else is doing, and listening out to each other, building up on top of each other. That's one. The other factor was conversation, turn taking in the conversations that were happening. So they were trying to measure uh, how much time was each person speaking, and it's not that
Mm.
everyone gets a limited time or fixed minutes of time to talk. It's just that they were trying to measure if everyone is equally participative and they are taking turns to equally, their contribution is equal, then that kind of builds into psychological safety because people were open to talk. They were not afraid that their ideas would be shunned, or they would be pulled back, or there would be any retaliation to what they are saying. So this kind of culture where people can express, or people can freely call out things, people can experiment without worrying about there any negative outcome as far as the
Exactly.
experiment is
Yes. So
related. And
yeah, I'll add few things here. So sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, yeah, go on.
yeah, some of the things that when these kind of things are happening. So let's say I'm talking and someone is not paying enough attention. They are listening to just to hear, not to understand.
Yeah,
And another thing is shutting down my views. So here I will start doing impression management. Now, I will try to put my impression in a such a way that I've someone not feel bad. So how I can do that? By doing something which is negative, like I'm not talking, even though I have a good idea, better idea in the group, I will not talk about it because I know if I start talking, someone will stop me or someone is not listening to me. So I'll share a few of my examples here, and I can relate those why it does not went into high performing teams. So, like you said, how much time do you get to talk? Even though the time is not fixed, if I'm getting only 1 minute to talk in 1 hour meeting, I feel that is not sufficient to put across my views. Other members are getting enough time, or some one member taking most of the time in 1 hour. That will impact overall performance of the team. If it
yeah,
happens with your team member, so to my audience, if this happens to your team member, keep an eye. This is not you are not building a psychological safe environment. Person wants to talk, they have views and it's a human view. So these are some of the add-ons that I want to add to what Ankit said. So Ankit. mm,
yeah. Interestingly, I was just talking to a friend this morning, and they were
mm,
sharing their interview experience with me. So recently, and it's interesting, right? Because we are only talking about teams, but psychological safety is also important in interviews. If you
right,
don't
absolutely.
provide that environment to people, they will not be able to give their best to you.
Right.
So I was speaking to a friend, and they were sharing a recent experience of their interview where they said they were trying to give answers, and the person on the other side was doing multiple things. They were multitasking, and my friend could see that. The end of the interview was in a way where my friend told them that if this is how you would want to do the interview, I will probably withdraw my application.
That
And
actually he or she did a very good thing. I appreciate. Such kind of things should more happen because even I have experienced it. Um, I when I used to give interview, I have experienced that the interviewer didn't turn on his camera and he wanted me to turn on my
but
camera.
that is very common. That is very common and very disappointing.
So never go ahead with such interviews, guys. So we may divert from the topic. We'll come back to now that to psychological safety and how this psychological safety is key and hold a very essential um, part of making high performing teams. So another thing is, I want to let's dive into our topic is how do you come to conclusion, or somewhere you feel that okay, now team is going towards psychological safe or high performing area. So can you share any moment when you saw team is really working well together?
Y- Yeah, so I worked with I've worked with a lot of teams, and even in my current portfolio, right, there are
Hmm.
like a lot of teams that I would probably go and coach to. But sometime back, I was working with a team, and the team was when I started working with them, they were also like almost newly put together, and there was too much chaos, which was expected because there was a new team put together. There were a lot of changes, and they would have a huge backlog sprint on sprint. They would not be able to talk, and then testers and developers would not have too much in sync. They would have different views, disagreements, things like that. And all this, I think, with couple of quarters or in 2 quarters, I could see the difference where this team, I would still call it the best team that I've worked with. Um Testers would call out on a daily sync up saying, I have got some bandwidth. The developers are doing manual activity. I'm going to go and help them do this. And this is despite of so there were a lot of factors playing in. There was the developers were reporting to someone else, the QAs were reporting to someone else, and a lot of them were trying to please their own bosses.
Hmm.
But now, within some time, when I think we worked together for 6 months, and I worked with them for 6 months more. But after 6 months, we were at a stage where they were all keen on achieving the sprint goal that they put together, and they were kind of able to uh, disconnect from their bosses would want, but they would more relate to what we have committed to as a team. So, and equally opposite, there would be performance testers who would say, let us help you in functional testing. Or the developers would come and say that, this is simple. We probably do the testing, attach the screenshots. Why don't you just validate? Otherwise, we might miss our release date. There was a lot of chaos around giving the testers enough time before releasing. So they would say, no, okay, let us agree on a date and time. So and a lot of, once they got into that rhythm, the the reason I would call them high performing is they were able to identify these constraints which were stopping them. For example, the time for regression testing or the communication channel or things like that. And they were able to agree on it that okay, let's why don't we do this? And
Hmm.
eventually my role was only of a facilitator. And then I used to intentionally miss some of their ceremonies just to see if they were going back to their previous stages. And it did happen a couple of times, but then there was a momentum where I wouldn't think of anyone on that team as a developer or a QA or a performance tester. I would think of them as the team. One
Right.
person, four people, five people, I don't care. I would think, and then we were able to have that conversations where if even one single ticket was not met, everyone would feel equally bad. If they could have done something differently, they would equally feel for it. And they would not say that okay, this person did not do it or that person did not do it. So that kind of environment where you want to take control as a team, not as an individual, take ownership of your goals, uh, take ownership of what is that you're doing, and then most importantly, finding constraints, getting over them, finding new constraints and getting over them. That I would call as a high performing team, because then that reflects in your culture, uh, in your behavior, and then obviously in your outcomes as well.
Well said. Very, very nice example. And I must, I would love to work with such team actually, to be honest. Even as a development team member and even as a scrum master.
I'm sure some of them would be listening to this whenever we put this out. I know a lot of them do follow you and me on LinkedIn, so some of them would definitely
Definitely.
listen to this.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll share my one of my examples that I remember working with one team, and one of the team member I always used to admire. How that person uh, have very good openness or courage to speak up. So in one of the daily scrum, that person come up and said that Nagesh, during the planning or refinement, I misunderstood this requirement. I thought it's a pretty big requirement, but somehow I feel this can be done in one day. So I will complete it, but there are few backlog items. I have already refined it, and I'll pull them once I finish this. So I have capacity. So this kind of uh, response, or this kind of a feedback from that person, really changed my view. Because here, that person has courage to say that the previous mistake, and how that person has corrected it, and on top of that, that person shows self manage behavior to pull more work, so that it can, boost up our sprint goal. So this kind of, if teams, this behavior is one of the team member, if what if everyone start doing it, that will lead us to a high performing team.
Yeah, actually, very well said, and that's something I think I missed in my example. It is also, I mean, one of the definitions of psychological safety would also be where people are not worried about owning up things that they missed, or if there was a failure or they had a
Right.
mistake, and we would just very casually talk about it, like, oh, okay, I missed this, but then you know what, I'm going to do something about it, and then, or maybe I missed this because I did not do this from next time onwards. So then there was very little intervention needed, because uh, they were very comfortable in calling out things which did not work, but then also find, ways of how they would probably learn from it and move ahead. So there was no stopping, there was no retaliation, there was no negative outcome of missing out on anything. It only, let everyone think, okay, let's do it. Why not?
Take it as a learning instead of,
Yeah.
thinking as it's a mistake. So that's another topic that we are currently discussing. So we'll have another episode on how to learn from your mistakes. So we'll have
Yeah.
another episode on that. But moving ahead, you know what role does, trust plays? We already briefly touched about it, but having a lot of a good trust among the team, how big it is, to build this team.
So if you go back to what I said earlier, right, where
Mm.
for my team the developers were reporting to different people, that QAs were reporting to different people. One of the things that I had realized after working with them for a couple of sprints is that they did not connect well with each other. They were worried that if they do something, their bosses would act differently, and they did not have that trust that whatever happens within the team will stay within the team, and that is why that. And eventually, what we started doing is we started having discussions or conversations which were not related to work. I made it a point that every Friday we spend an hour just talking about what everyone likes to do, just talking, and it's absolutely no work call. And I also tried to get people onto video calls, and that was one of the things, not the only thing, but that was one of the things that changed. That okay, people started getting to know each other. They realized that they were all there to uh, trying to do the same thing. So it's not that they have to think of only their bosses or someone else's bosses. They were to also think about each other as a team and then think about the goal. So that started building the trust. Then we would, I would probably pair people with each other, saying that why don't you do this together? Why don't you do that together? Or even give them responsibility together. Why don't the two of you try take a lead on this? So that when people interact with each other, when people get to know each other outside just the meetings or calls and just the work, they see the human side of each other, which is very important for a team to see the human side of each other. And then you would get to see the trust playing. In fact, now I just remembered, I am sure you have seen it and everyone else has seen it, the video from Simon Sinek where he talks about Navy SEAL teams from Navy. And
Navy, yes. Mm.
I think the biggest important factor he said would be trust, even more than skills, more than anything else. Trust is what they would look for. So that itself is explanatory of the role of trust in building a team.
Nice. But now you mentioned one point here, pairing some people or sharing responsibilities. uh, Sometimes team member don't agree with, there is a disagreement. How do you handle this kind of disagreement? I've heard, like, I've seen a lot of cases, I don't want to work with this person, something like that.
So I think and again, if you are a coach or someone in that shoes, the first thing that I would do on a disagreement is like do nothing, just observe, uh, just see. Importantly, not be biased, very neutrally, have empathy, and just see disagreement. Most of the times, or many times that I've seen disagreements are mostly due to misunderstanding or incorrect understanding of what people want on a team or what people understand on a team. They are probably misunderstood, and that's why that trust factor that we just spoke about is lost. So when it is time for you to, intervene, I think uh, promote an open conversation, open dialogue where people can turn by turn call out of why do they have that disagreement, or for your example, why is that they wouldn't want to talk about each other. And then once that is out, probably give them some space, try to bring them back to they were all together to do a team goal and not have an individual goal. So that sort of a thing, probably let them call out their expectations and let them agree on disagree on it,
Mm,
because it's okay sometimes to even disagree, but then that this is something that one person expects on the team which is not probably on the table now, so you would disagree to that, but that transparency or that clear communication is there. And then let them go together again. So
mm,
most likely, I mean, to summarize that, active listening, open dialogue, and empathy put together, and then allowing everyone to share their perspectives and then resolve conflicts from there could be a way to go about it. And like I said, mostly it's always because people uh, have misconceptions of what others expect of them or what they would expect from others.
mhm. Right, rightly said. Yeah. So these are very very good tips to follow. But are there any some practical tips or activities a team or a scrum master can perform and get most of the uh, outcome from the these activity, as well as walk on the path of making high performing teams?
Oh yes, there are a couple that I know there are a lot of them. I will probably talk about three or four that I have used a couple of times, or which the ones that I use mostly. So the first one, which I think I've seen some teams doing it, but I always do it with the teams that I work with, is having a team charter or having an agreement charter between the team.
Right.
And then I think there is one template from Scrumming, but then you can take any other template that you would like to. In fact, I'll share links and maybe we can put it on the video description
Yeah,
for people
we'll
to
put
use.
it in the description. Yes.
Yeah. So what the template is, it's just a combination of things that you would need to work together. For example, and I find this very interesting to have a team name, of course, something that you all relate to. Mostly people go with superhero names, and then I have my own preferences with superhero names. So mostly people choose some superhero or sci-fi movie name or something like that. So have that team have a statement or a mission statement for your team, right? Something that describes all of you, something that put together, and that kind of brings you in that encapsulation where you are all trying to agree to one thing, that this is what describes us. So having that team statement, then putting all your ceremonies and cadences on that charter, putting what is that you are being measured on. So the metrics that you would agree that you are being measured on. So either they are OKRs or any sprint metrics, or if you're not doing Scrum, anything else, but anything that you are being measured on, you should put your values. For example, if you're doing Scrum, then you put your Scrum values, or if you're doing Kanban, then you put your Kanban values. If you have any team values, and it could be as simple as we won't, unless there is a SAFe2 issue, we don't work after 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. That's an example of what you would want to have there. Uh, Irrespective of uh, how crazy it might sound, we will listen to ideas but not judge people.
Right.
So These kind of things you should put in values. You could also say that, we believe in psychological safety. We believe in celebrating failures, something that we just spoke about. So note down your values, note down things that you would do, things that you would not do, things that you can even go ahead and put, like, if any of these happen, we will simply escalate, we'll not put our time into it. Distractions to avoid. There are endless things that you can put on that template, but the idea is to just have something common put on a board. If you are a team working co-located, just put it on a wall and saying that this is what we stand for as a team.
Right.
Agree on things. This is what we agree on. This is what we have collectively decided that we will not entertain. For example, we will not entertain any unplanned work during a sprint unless the product owner suggests or the product owner changes our sprint goal, for example. So
Yes.
then
Yes.
that becomes a team agreement. So having all of these together will give you a way of working, which is irrespective of what method or what framework you follow, is just for your team, and it will change from team to team. So
Absolutely. See, yeah, these agreements are very, very essential. I worked with a team as a development team member where we had an agreement. So allow everyone to speak. If someone is speaking, do not disturb. These kind of statements were there. Apart from that, like you said, values. I believe in my team member, right? So whatever we are doing for our team. This kind of statement will help on this charter, and keep going through. One more tip that I want to add, and keep going through this charter again and again. Read through it, because uh, in the flow you may miss out something you forgot, while doing the work. But once you go back to the charter and then you read it once again, then you realize, oh, this is something we have written it, but we are not following it thoroughly or correctly. Let's regroup, and let's start doing it from zero um, to make it working again. So these are some of the tips that I would like to share on top of what you said.
definitely yes. In fact, all the other 2 or 3 exercises that I'm going to talk about, each one of them you have to go through them again and again on a rational or a reasonable interval where you think now it's time to take a look at it.
Mm.
Or if you build that kind of a mature team, then eventually the team will be, you won't even have to worry about it. For example, one of my teams, they would look at it in a retrospective and say, uh, you know what, this is a good learning, they should go on our charter. And then they would go and it's their charter, they are owning it, they change it. I
Mm.
just facilitate or I just observe. So yes, looking at it on a regular interval or whenever you need is a good idea. Similar to this one, the next one is what I have used multiple times is role expectation metrics. And I
Okay.
think a lot of people have done this, not just with the with the name. I'm not saying role expectation is the only name, but what you do essentially is you get everyone together, and this is also good for new teams. You get everyone together, all the roles on the team, right? Development, QA, non-functional testing, Scrum Master, Release Manager, whatever role. You put a horizontal column to it and you put a vertical column to it, and you put all the roles horizontally, you put all the roles vertically, and you create a 2D table.
Mm.
And now you will ask everyone to put what they expect of their own role. For example, a developer would also put into a vertical column of developer in the box in the particular cell what is that they would expect the developers to do, but then they will also call out their expectations for testers, scrum masters, product owners, release managers, that this is what as a developer I would expect you to do to support me or to
Right.
support team goals. And then everyone will do that. Now the interesting part is we're not going to agree to everything that is written there, but you have set out what you think should be an expectation. And sometimes there could be expectations which are based on your prior context, but which are not valid. So having them written there, you call out, and then you go through that entire table. You say that, you know what, yes, this is your expectation. We respect that, but this is something not. This is probably not something we'll be able to do. So let's
Mm.
park it. So now the developer knows that, oh, I cannot expect this from a QA.
Oh, that's nice.
So so having then once you everyone has written their expectations from their own selves and everyone else, then you go into each box and call out what everyone wants that role to do, or what everyone wants the other role to do. And then you keep parking on things which you think you cannot agree on. So at least you know that this is a gray area, or at least everyone knows that this we are not agreeing on, but this we are agreeing on. This is what, and it also gives a lot of clarity. For example, as a scrum master, you would at times have challenges. For example, as a scrum master, I would expect developers, testers, everyone to keep the scrum board transparent always, the meaning
Up
keep
to
your tickets updated.
updated. Yes.
Why I would expect that? Because then neither me, no one else would ever ping you saying what is the status of something. It is there on the board, go and see. For that
Right.
to happen, for me to be able to shield the team, I would want them to do something which is necessary to do that. So then once that expectation is written there, I can call this out and have explain my side of thing of why I would explain. It's a very interesting, I have seen very interesting conversations happening, a lot of misconceptions going out of the room, and teams, even with disagreements, team knowing what is that they would want from each other. So those kind of things would happen. And then those things that you park, right? Like we said, regularly visit the exercises. Maybe if you're matured now, say, this is what we had parked. Is there something else we can bring in now? Or is there something else that can go out now because we are more matured? So that's again for team, it's related to team charter. There are two things that I have tried and works for psychological safety, which I will quickly call out. So one is something called as this person, that person. Um,
Okay.
and I think this is very nicely explained on Fun Retro. Again, we'll share the links. But what you do is you create two columns, this person, that person, and you ask everyone to go back to their previous teams, previous experiences. And this is the key part. You don't have to think about the people which are on your team right now. Very importantly, you have to think about people from your past experiences. So think about, and everyone comes up with, uh, this person is someone that you would, this person behavior is something that you would want to encourage in your team. That person is something where we say, we don't want to be like that person.
Right.
So that person is something, or is a behavior that you want to discourage. So everyone puts, for example, we had we had an architect and he was very approachable. So we would like the tech SMEs to, be approachable so that we can freely ask questions. So that's a this person behavior.
This person behavior. Yeah.
That person behavior is, that person never was never a team player. He would want to do things, or she would want to things do things on their own, or they would always want to work alone. We would never know what is that they are doing, or they would never be able to cover for us. So that is something that we want to discourage. So put everything in this person, put everything in that person, things that you would, that things that you've gone through in the past. Is just that either you liked it and you want to promote it, or you disliked it and you want everyone. So what is happening here is each one is telling everyone else on the team that this is what we like or this is what we don't like, and that builds the culture of your team. For that,
Absolutely.
probably again you will have disagreements there as well, but at least you would know the disagreements around.
Yeah. So it's well documented and people can refer it. You can read it and then act.
Yes, and then you talk about it of why you felt that way. So when you also talk about it, that psychological safety comes in where you are freely expressing why you thought of it that way. The last one, very quickly, is uh, just for psychological safety again, have a table where you have three columns.
Mhm.
What is that we are worried about? Um, so, for example, things that we are afraid of. What is that? How do we resolve that? And why are we, sorry, things that we are worried about, why are we worried about it, and how do we mitigate that?
How do
For
you?
example,
Mm.
for example, someone will say that we are worried or we are afraid of trying an automation in here. Why? Because if it fails, we might have lost time, which
Mm.
we'll still not finish testing. We would have lost time, and our sprint goal would be at risk. How do we mitigate that? Then everyone will agree that if if it's an experiment and we want to do, and if it's for the sake of the team's continuous improvement, let's do it in a sprint which has less work, or let's plan less work in that sprint, give this experiment a try. But because if it works, then we will have an automation or DevOps in place. So this is just a very rough example. But then the other one could be we are afraid of sharing new ideas because
Right.
we are worried leadership would shut our ideas. How do we mitigate it? We call this out in any of our meetings with the leadership that we want this kind of an autonomy with us where we want to try experiment so that we can be better as a team. So list down things that you are afraid of or worried about or things that you think are restricting you. Also list down why do you think they are restricting you, and then put out saying this is how we will try to mitigate it. Can you do it all in a day? No.
No.
But having put it having your fears put out there, people will be sensitive towards each other. People would more have an context of where each and everyone is coming from. And then sometimes you can also feel when you are comfortable with leadership, you can also share it outside. But at least within the team, you would know that what is someone else is worried about. And as a human being, you are always going to be sensitive about it. So then that helps build that culture where you are respecting everyone else.
Great, good. So, to my audience, we are going to share the details about all these exercises into description box. If there are any videos, we will link it to the description as well. And please go through it, refer it, practice it. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comments. And we are going to give contact details of Ankit also into description box. Feel free to connect with Ankit. I will highly recommend to connect with him. Ask him questions. He will be more interested to help you. Okay, coming on to our last question. Now that someone is new and he is trying to build a high performing team, he want to team practice their team to practice psychological safety. What are the some of the tips or next things to do you will suggest?
Um, I think the most important thing to keep in mind when you're starting a new team is to remember that it will take time.
Right.
You will not have a high performing team on day one. You will have to go through those forming, norming, storming stages. But what you can do is, have the basics like respecting each other, active listening, or promoting that open conversation, right? Start with letting people each other know each other outside work. Don't keep it to, and this is something I truly believe in, that whenever you are meeting a new people or forming a new team, let people socialize, let them know each other, let them know what are their likes and dislikes, because then that's how they are going to bond together. Or like what you said, for the well-oiled machine to be put together, the components should know each other. So that
Right.
has to happen. Observe how they are doing things, right? If you need to intervene, be careful, because you don't want them to be dependent on you always. If you intervene day one, then they were always going to bring things back to you, and they are
Right.
not going to be a team in that case. Another important thing is celebrate small wins, celebrate failures. If there are things, talk openly about it. Uh, Bring out learnings. If there are achievements, call that out. Give team the time to enjoy the credit. Uh, Things you should be careful about when you're doing the forming, norming, storming kind of a stage. Then you're going. There is always a possibility of you slipping from storming to norming to storming again. So be careful that when you're norming, you see, after a few weeks of conflicts or a few weeks of storming, you see team has started to work slightly together. And if you like rush them into a lot of expectations, they would slip back to where they were last week. So don't do that. Let them mature into each stage. And once you have that team, which is started to, then try to keep that team together. The only other thing that I hate is most of the ways that our projects or product teams are put up in a construct, people try to tear apart the teams every 3 months, every 6 months, which
Mm.
helps no one.
Right.
It takes time to build a high performing team or a team that works together with autonomy. If you keep tearing them apart, you're going to lose what you have invested in.
Absolutely.
So
Mm.
that is more important. And try some of these exercises that we've said just now, but it's not that you book one day and then all do all three exercises and come out of it. You can start with either the team charter or the role expectation metrics. Maybe after a couple of sprints, try the one for psychological safety to see how the team is doing, and then introduce exercises. If you think You block one day, make them do all these exercises, and at the end of the day, your team is having psychological safety and as a very high performing team. I don't think that is going to happen.
Never going to happen. Yes,
It takes time, uh,
absolutely.
but once it is there, then keep them together.
Great. Amazing. Thanks a lot, Ankit, for your time and this wonderful discussion. So to my viewers, if you enjoyed this discussion so far, please like the video, add a comment, share with your friends, share with your Scrum Masters if you are watching it. So Ankit, once again, really thank you for being here as a speaker today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nagesh. I'm always happy to be here. Do remember my request of doing a CID podcast. We should do
Yes,
that.
we'll do
Invite
that.
more people.
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
will invite more people.
We'll do that definitely. Yeah,
But yes,
yeah.
I will share all the links and exercises, and we can put in the video. I'm happy to be contacted or just to talk about these things with people. And it's always a learning experience being here. So thank you, Nagesh.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye, guys.